Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we got a big news day. The Canadian budget dropped. Conservatives seem to be leaving the Conservative Party, going over to the Liberals. It's rumored Mark Carney could have a majority government by Friday. My feelings are really with Canadians because that could be the end of Canada if that happens. But it also could be very good for the Alberta separatist movement. Let's get into all the news.
Yes, 1 second, sorry. You're always saying I'm fumbling around, and clearly I am. This is what happens when I control everything. Okay, there we go. So from Francisco Terrazzano, Carney's budget debt spirals out of control because spending spirals out of control. Massive 78 billion deficit, huge spending increase. Every dollar you pay in GST will go to pay in interest of debt. Carney also hammering Canadian business with industrial carbon tax.
Yeah, and we have to remember the majority of Trudeau's budgets were around 40 to 45 million. This is almost 80 billion dollars. This is almost double. This is going to put Canada in a lot of debt. This wasn't just this year's budget. They are looking to go into almost $500 billion worth of debt over the next few years. So I don't think this is good for Canada. Canada is trying to fund everything like a socialist society rather than let private industry come in by cutting the red tape.
Breaking Carney's budget, the debt spirals out of control because spending is spiraling out of control. The deficit this year, folks, we're looking at $78 billion. The government will be borrowing almost $80 billion. And what does that mean? More money wasted on debt interest payments. Welcome to Canada, folks, where every single dollar that you're paying in federal sales tax is now going to pay interest charges on the debt. Interest charges on the debt will cost $56 billion this year. Gross. And as I said, the debt is spiraling out of control because spending is spiraling out of control. Let's look at the numbers, folks. Okay, so spending. The Carney government will spend $581 billion this year, increasing spending by $38 billion over last year. And folks, every year, spending is going up by billions of dollars. Absolutely zero plan to balance the budget. Now, folks, you're going to hear two things from the government. Okay, number one.
And what Carney is saying is this isn't spending, this is investment. This is the exact same line Justin Trudeau used for 10 years, the exact same plan, only times pretty much double almost. It did not work for Justin Trudeau. It spiraled the Canadian government. They need to start focusing on their strengths, which is their natural resources. Just like the American strength is their military and their stock market, Canada really needs to get rid of the red tape and get these mining companies, lumber companies, and oil companies back into Canada, back drilling.
One, balance the operating budget, balance the operating budget, balance the operating budget. Excuse me, you're not balancing squat if you're borrowing tens of billions of dollars every single year. The second thing you might hear from this government is, don't worry, folks, we're cutting waste. Well, I don't know about you, but you're saving money wrong when you're increasing spending by billions of dollars every single year, and that is exactly what is going on in budget 2025, okay? And all the savings the government is talking about, well, guess what, folks? That's savings down the road, right? What have we heard from the government all the time? We'll go on a diet, it'll be on Monday, and then Monday never comes. Folks, we don't need another plan to plan about having a meeting about cutting spending. Canadians need real spending cuts right now, and it has to start with the bloated federal bureaucracy. You know that the federal government added 100,000 bureaucrats, ballooned the cost of the bureaucracy 77% since 2016. Okay, folks, so let's think about it again.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Way up.
Now, when you kind of dig into this budget, what it is there is a ton of military spending, and that's because Trump is kind of holding their feet to the fire and making them give their 2 or 5% or whatever it is. Canada typically doesn't invest any money in the military. That money is going to go directly to the American military industrial complex. They need to have a long-term strategy of bringing military manufacturing to Canada if that's going to be a regular expense, which it looks to be. The second part is this green scam. scam. There is a ton of investments in carbon capture. Carbon capture is nothing more than a scam. You're sucking carbon out of the air with these huge fans that are using electricity. Then you're putting that onto trucks. Then you're digging holes and you're burying that carbon. And then you're charging companies a tax because you consider them to be in a dirty industry. They need to cut the red tape, cut the bullshit, cut the carbon tax, cut all this green investment, which is nothing more than a scam. Mark Carney is the architect of a lot of this green scam. That's why they're so heavily invested and why he does not want to move away from it.
And funnily enough, right before we left Canada, there was already a huge cost of living crisis in Vancouver as well. And now they want to continue to increase how much money the government is spending and borrowing from taxpayers. And of course, increasing taxes as well for nothing, because every single system that the government is taking care of and supposedly needs more money to pay for is breaking. The healthcare system, the education system, all the systems that the government is now appropriating and spending more money on other than themselves is breaking, including the government.
Well, and I'm not necessarily against investment. I would be all in for generational investment, like they're calling it. I'm just not up for it first. The first thing you need to do is cut red tape, bring private industry in so that you can see where the holes in the economy are and where the investment dollars are going to go the furthest. Also, those investment dollars can be put up with private industry after private industry comes in and does the initial investment. I think that's how America does it. I think that's how it's best done. They're basically trying to create a socialized government here. Why don't you go to you for a moment?
Me?
Go to you.
Yes, we do have a dog, so apologies for that. There's other dogs barking outside the studio, and it makes her go a little bit crazy. But as we are talking, surprisingly, and one of the other stuff I put in the title was that the Liberals are apparently not doing so bad after the budget release, which goes completely against everything we had predicted could happen, especially you.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that the Liberals are doing good. I think they're doing extremely bad. I think they knew this budget was going to kind of hang them in the public's eyes. So I think they're doing backroom wheeling and dealing with conservatives, probably funneling millions of dollars in offshore bank accounts, because I don't see how they're getting these conservatives to come over when the Liberals are doing more of the same. And the specific conservative candidate that did come over to the Liberal Party was literally talking against everything they're currently doing. It looks like there may be 2 more conservative MPs by Friday coming over. If that happens, that gives the Liberal government a majority without an election. That basically secures the next few years for Canada to go down a very, very dark path. Except for, I think it would be good for the Alberta separatist movement. I'm big into the Alberta separatist movement. I thought if there was an election and the Conservatives possibly won, that would put the nail in the coffin of the Alberta separatist movement. But with Carney securing a majority government, possibly, I think the Alberta separatist movement is going to be extremely strengthened, and a lot of Albertans are going to want to leave. We already left Canada a few years ago. I had enough then. I just don't think the Canadian people are going to vote their way out of this. They need a conservative government. They need somebody that's fiscally responsible and going to bring private industry into the country. It's currently fleeing to the United States.
And also, they need someone that doesn't continuously blame just Trump and the United States for their own problems. From Mark Nixon, Champagne says we can't blame the Liberals for the last decade of failures because the world has changed since Trump. It's never their fault, the Liberal government's only consistent policy. Blame everyone else. And in Canada, since Daddy Trudeau was in there, all of these policies were already being put into place. And then Trudeau just further did throughout the 10 almost more years that he was in power. So, of course, he was there before Trump even got there. So,
yeah, this was their plan before Trump ever got into office. They had 10 years before Trump ever got in. This is a failing plan put on steroids. Now that Trump's in there, they want to say orange man bad because they're scared an election might be called. I think they're in a good position for an election right now. So I don't think one necessarily will be called.
I would say my impression after going through the budget is the pitch is we have to spend this much. I know you're going to say invest, but you're spending money, you're spending taxpayer money in order to garner a significant growth in the return on investment. And my question to you is how do you know that return will come? And I put to you with great respect, you were the ministry who oversaw decisions to put a ton of taxpayer money into the EV sector that is now blowing up in all our faces.
People understand at home, we have some headwinds. The world has changed. We live in a very different world, and the way forward for us, and I know you...
Yeah, and he wants to say the world's changed because of Trump, but it hasn't changed because they were making these investments before. Like she said, these EV mandates, they were all in on these green policies, over $15 billion invested and $15 billion lost because these companies have either left Canada or declared bankruptcy. It looked like it was ways to funnel money into their friends' pockets.
Would want to use the word spending, but folks at home understand. When you go to the grocery store, you spend. When you buy a house, you invest. For government, it's about the same, you know.
As you speak, it reminds me so clearly of a message you delivered as a different kind of minister under a different prime minister, but from the same party. When over and over the refrain from your government at the time was confident Canadians invest in themselves. And the promise was also for economic growth. Instead, what happened on a per capita basis is that GDP declined by 2.5% below pre-pandemic levels over the last 5 years. Liberals were not able to deliver on the promise that you're making tonight. Why is this time any different?
But in fairness, Bashi, in fairness, the world has changed. I mean, people understand at home. The scope, speed, and scale of the change. I wish you would be at the G7 with me. When we sit together, we say what we're seeing today is unprecedented, probably since 1945. So you can compare a period before the world changed, when our largest trading partner decided to change the rules of the game, not only for Canada, but for the world.
But
like, you can compare these two periods. It's like if you...
But really, because...
And they were using the United States before this by tariffing the United States. When Trump decided to tariff them back, they're trying to take the moral high ground and say that's inappropriate. It's only appropriate for tariffs to go one way if you're Canadian, I guess, or the Canadian government. They need to get private investment into Canada. They have a ton of natural resources. Canada is a very attractive country to investors if they can get rid of the red tape. But instead of getting rid of it, they put more and more and more up and more taxes on private businesses. It's unattractive because the government is standing in the way of real investment.
And every single time we see them mess up or have to face their errors, even from the, subsidized press and the bought out Canadian press, as we saw right there, they will continue to blame someone else, as most socialist communist governments do. If you're in Mexico, that happens all the time. If you're in Latin America, somebody else is always to blame. And the fact that the government couldn't confront what was actually happening in the unprecedented times should give you less confidence, not more, in how the government is handling things.
Yeah, and the fact that they're continuously to invest in green energy in a cold country with not a lot of sun, and now they're going to invest in carbon capture, all that green money they previously invested has just disappeared into the wind because they invested in EV batteries. They needed to diversify their investments over a broad scale. So if one sector failed, their other investments, they would at least have something to show for it. Half of their investments, or more than half of their investments, are going directly to the military and the military industrial complex in the US.
And you kind of touched on it earlier, but apparently there have been some conservatives moving across the aisle towards the liberals, and that's something right after the budget was released. And it's something that I think not a lot of people expected to happen.
Well,
I think the crisis in confidence is coming apparently to the conservatives and not the liberals.
I think nobody expected it except for Mark Carney. I think Mark Carney has been planning this for a long time. He says he didn't need the NDP because he knew he had these conservative MPs probably in his pocket ready to cross the aisle. He's now asking them to cross over. One has already done it. If he gets two more, he then has a majority government. This is very scary because if they leave, Pierre Poilievre is the leader of the conservative movement and he's up for review early next year. If 3 MPs leave and the Liberals get a majority government, Pierre Poilievre is probably going to cease to be leader, and there is absolutely nobody to replace him. As much as I say Poilievre is a little bit of a rhino and I don't like some of his policies, he's by far and away the best the conservatives have. There is nobody else. The person they had before him was Aaron O'Toole, which was a straight up liberal calling himself conservative. Probably who would take Pierre Poilievre's place would maybe be Doug Ford, who again is just a straight up liberal calling himself a conservative. They need Danielle Smith for the Alberta separatist movement. She's also too radical in a lot of Canadians' eyes to lead the party. I really like Danielle Smith, and I think she'll make a great leader of Alberta. If you are watching us from Alberta, I do hope you vote in that separatist movement to leave Canada.
I forgot what I was going to say. Somebody that could lead the Conservative Party towards better pastures, but probably not, would be Maxime Bernier, but they've betrayed him more than anybody else. But as Mario Celaya says here, unprecedented, it's very likely that Mark Carney will form a majority government. Rumors are that several more will cross the floor. Canadians did not vote for this. This is a betrayal to all Canadians.
I don't have the greatest news. It looks like Mark Carney will likely be forming a majority government. He's going to do this by courting other MPs to join the Liberal Party. We've already seen Chris from Nova Scotia, I think it's Detremont. He just joined the Liberal Party of Canada. That puts Mark Carney 2 people away from forming a majority. I just got word that a second is going to be crossing the floor. What worries me is the Toronto Sun just put out an article talking about 2 others that are being courted. The people that are mentioned in the article isn't the same person that I heard is crossing the floor. That would give Mark Carney the majority. I don't understand how one could do this to their voters or to even their country. The sad reality is so many people volunteered for that election. So many people participated, donated money to have a conservative representative who won, only to have that conservative representative leave and join the party that they didn't want to vote for in the first place. I don't understand how these members of parliament think that this is okay. This is the ultimate betrayal. This is a betrayal on all voters. It's a betrayal on our whole democratic system. We voted you to represent a certain set of values. And then they join another party that is in contrary to those values. It makes absolutely no sense. If you really want to leave the Conservative Party, resign. Let the people decide who they want representing them in Parliament. Call a by-election. This is insane.
Okay, and I'm going to say this. Mark Carney might think he's really slick here, but without Alberta, the Canadian government and the provinces will fall, and they will fall hard. By creating a majority government, if it actually happens, I think it might not secure the separation of Alberta, but it strengthens it to a point. The entire world is going to be watching that referendum vote. It's supposed to happen sometime next year.
And from Brian Lilly, we have floor crossers who will cross next, the budget and Eurovision. Let's start with the sexy stuff because the budget is definitely not sexy. We have a floor crossover. It's been a while since an MP elected with one party crossed the floor to sit with another. The last one I remember was Jenica Atwin, the Green MP who had a strange obsession with Israel, deciding that her party wasn't anti-Semitic enough and crossed to join Trudeau's Liberals.
And 1 second, we have to realize there's hundreds of billions of dollars being invested here. Mark Carney has people in, what's the former company called again? Not BlackRock. Brookfield Asset Management. It's going to be easy to funnel payoffs to offshore accounts, family members, or who knows what from private industry. Private industry is going to make billions of dollars off of this new budget. So, I mean, I do not trust what kind of happened here. I do not trust what's happening in Canada. Again, the only solution going forward, if he forms a majority government, is for Alberta to separate. Okay, let's continue here.
Okay. I read, why don't you take care of that? Now we have a Conservative MP, Chris Detremont from Acadie and there, he floated the idea that he would cross the floor to support the budget to Politico when most Ottawa journalists were literally locked up, not able to effectively communicate with the outside world. While they poured the details over for the budget. After the budget was delivered, he had a tense moment. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre had a tense moment with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in the lobby of the House of Commons. Depending on who you believe, Poilievre kicked him out of the Conservative caucus, or he said, "You can't fire me, I quit." Bottom line, you can't have someone sitting in your caucus who is publicly musing about joining the other team. And if there are people or MPs that are musing about joining the other team, maybe the Conservative Party also has to look at itself and think what they can do to bring them back, or at least try to court them back into being actual Conservatives and the people that their voters actually voted for.
No, I don't think they need to court these Conservatives back to the Conservative movement. The problem is with the MP that left, it was almost a 50-50 riding. He only won by 500 votes. So what he's thinking is he can defect to the Liberals, and all of the Liberals in his district will then vote for him. What needs to happen is an Alberta separatist movement needs to happen. That's the only thing left on the table if this majority government happens and they continue to give bribes and court Conservatives over to the Liberal movement.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the Alberta, it's not... The movement is... The Alberta separatist movement is there, but it's now the voting and the whole... What are those called?
The referendum.
The referendums that they have to do.
Yeah, the referendum's coming in 2026. That's what I said. I said they're going to have to vote to separate from Canada at this point.
And now this from Mark Nixon. If you don't follow Mark Nixon, follow him for Canadian news. Says Canadians, regardless if they're liberal or conservatives, will never forgive this. This man is a traitor. He has voted in. As a conservative, the right thing to do would have been to step down from politics completely and held another vote to let the voters actually decide, but no.
Be there for a second. I just got a text from Chris D'Entremont, who tells me that he is joining the government caucus. So Chris D'Entremont has resigned from the Conservative caucus because of obviously issues over the possibility that this budget could be defeated and lead to an election. He resigned as a Conservative today, and he tells me that he is joining the government caucus. So there you go. The Mark Carney caucus is now up to 170 seats, minus the Speaker. That brings him down to 169. They need 2 seats, Peter, to pass the budget. So I don't know if this budget will deliver economic growth, but it's deliver caucus growth at a share of
You've been working on that all afternoon, haven't you?
Well, it's been a weird day of math. Okay, but just going back to the concerns that you were talking about writ large on the macro situation, and we're going to talk to Goldie Hyder and there for a second.
What we have to realize here is if Carney does get the majority government, it's not just about this budget. He's going to be able to push anything he wants through because he will have a majority at that point. This entire global government, whether if he wants to destroy the Canadian government in order to kind of get a bailout and go towards a one world government or whatever he wants to do, he's going to be able to implement his green agenda and everything else at that point.
And it is starting to look and sound like what happened with Trudeau and his Liberal Party government when they were able to get the NDP on their side and then started trying to do everything they wanted to do. And eventually all Canadians realized that was not a good idea. And yet they still voted for Carney after that.
Yeah, I mean, even if it takes $1 billion to get each one of these candidates over, I don't know what kind of backroom dealings they're doing. It would be well worth it, and it would be easy to find the money from his private sector buddies.
And now, moving on countries to where we now actually live, in Mexico, there has been quite a few shakeups and protests and things happening after the murder of governor? No, he was not a governor. I don't know how to say that word in English, but of Michoacan. And we have seen more and more violent riots erupting, first in Michoacan, where the mayor was murdered on Day of the Dead. And now they seem to be spreading throughout more and more cities, and there's bigger protests planned as well. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, the protest talk is really growing for, is it next Tuesday or Wednesday here in Mexico City?
No, Saturday Sunday the 15th,
okay.
November 15th.
It's expected to be fairly big now.
But this is how Michoacan is looking, and there are even talks of this maybe being able to form into the kinds of protests we saw in Nepal. They're calling it the Generation Z protests or the Gen Z protests. So and we are seeing people there in those videos in Spanish, of course, chanting, "Go away, Morena," who is the ruling party, and the party of Claudia Sheinbaum, who right now is president, who also had a little bit of a situation today, today or yesterday.
Yeah, and I don't know if these protests are actually I don't think they're going to go to the place Nepal went at all. The violence happened because it was spur of the moment. When it comes on Saturday, I also think this is a completely organic protest. I expect it to be fairly big, but rarely do you see organic protests globally really rise up. You're seeing a lot of people being bussed in when you're seeing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people kind of gather. I think this one's going to be organic, and it's going to be
There's been a lot of investigations by independent journalists that say that there may be involvement from other parties and other networks, some of them including NGOs like the George Soros Open Society Foundation. So it is all up in the air about how these protests will continue to be and happen, and if they are organic or not, especially the one coming to Mexico City. But the ones in Michoacan do seem organic, and they do seem to be spurring from the anger that a lot of people are feeling within Michoacan and the reason why Carlos Manso, the mayor, was murdered by the cartels and or by our government, just for asking for more safety and security. And this just continued to prove that you cannot do that in Mexico.
Yeah, but you have to ask yourself, where does this money come from, these color protests? And it's always from the left in the United States, funneled through NGOs. Claudia Sheinbaum is highly aligned with the left, so I don't expect a lot of George Soros money to come in and try to overthrow her. She's actually aligned with George Soros, and a lot of these color revolution money that would be coming in, I just don't see it going against her. No.
And what's happening in Mexico, especially with the younger people, the younger independent journalists, and a lot of the people that do commentary online, is that the protests, thanks to Claudia Sheinbaum, have been blamed on the right or the conservatives. However, most people on the right and the conservatives are saying, yes, we're sick and tired, but we don't want to put any kind of labeling on this. And there's also quite a few opportunists on the left that are trying to take over the protests. So it is an interesting moment in Mexican history, I guess, or in Mexican protest history, because it does seem organic, but at the same time, there's a lot of doubts about where they're coming from and where they could lead. Because right now, it's the, fifth consecutive day that they've been happening in the state of Michoacan. But if it does continue all the way for the next 10 days up to November 15th, will it take over other cities? And will it actually make a change and create an impact? Or will it stay with people just being angry and fed up, as it always has in the past?
The big change it will make will not be good. I'm not aligned with Claudia Sheinbaum in any way, shape, or form. I don't like her cultural policies. I'm more of a Trump supporter. I'm a conservative. She's on the left. That being said, it would be bad right now if these got out of hand and a color revolution happened with inside Mexico. I don't think that would happen, but she's been doing very, very good on these tariff negotiations with Trump. It's going to take another few months to kind of close those negotiations. Right now is not the time you want Claudia Sheinbaum to kind of fall. She's been doing good on the one aspect, and it's probably the single most important aspect that she'll have while she's in office, and that is these tariff deals with Trump.
And however, because of the inability to control the violence and the cartels and everything else happening in Mexico, not only from her, but from past governments for decades now, now the murder of the outspoken anti-crime mayor, Carlos Manso, spurs violent protests in Mexican state, and they might continue to grow elsewhere. Violent protests have broken out in the Mexican state of Michoacan over the murder of an outspoken anti-crime and anti-cartel mayor who was ended over the weekend while taking part in a Day of the Dead celebration. Protests began on Sunday in the state capital, Morelia, under the slogan, "Enough of abuses and omissions," and "Go away or out with Morena." The demonstration turned violent, and some people stormed Morelia's government palace. Local authorities confirmed 8 people were arrested.
It's very rare that a mayor actually speaks out. It's Lily Topaz, or what's her name again?
Tellez.
Well, Lily Tellez is not a mayor. She is able to speak up without any major repercussions. I think of anybody that's political right now, she has the most to gain because she seems to be able to speak up and not suffer the repercussions. Any mayor or anybody else in power right now, it's not in their best interest to speak up. I don't know how many are going to actually speak up.
And the protests are an honest reaction of the citizens of Michoacan, who for many years have been living under a context of extreme insecurity and high violence. And they have also been crying out for the federal government to do something, including Carlos Manso, who got murdered because of that and because of how outspoken he has been. And however, when Claudia Sheinbaum had to come out and had to speak about what had happened to him and the violence and the protests that were happening in Michoacan, she started to blame the right and the conservatives and saying that all was the fault of past governments, very similar to what the Canadian Liberals continue to do, saying, oh, it's all Trump's fault, and not wanting to confront the situation they've put the country in. However, now that there are talks about what Claudia Sheinbaum has or hasn't done and what should happen with her, if she's going to plan anything, they're saying that they're coming up with a plan to help fix the security in all of the country, which they've said a million times. They're starting to create smoke curtains around this and trying to give something else to talk about, even after there's been talks of taking Claudia out of power.
Well, I have a little bit of a different take on this, but why don't we watch the clip real quick?
So from Eduardo Menoni, says Claudia Sheinbaum makes a pathetic montage with pre-selected public and something to distract by being hugged or touched by a man while everybody else laughs. And this happened yesterday. So she was outside the National Palace greeting students, trying to make giving some sort of face and talking to the youth, because it is said that the youth is the ones that are planning these protests. When this man approached her, groped her, etc., there's a lot of doubts about the even security of the president herself. If they cannot control or secure the president herself, how can they control or secure the security in all of Mexico? We do know that Mexico has been militarized in the past few years, with the National Guard being used for everything, essentially.
Yeah, I almost think you're looking too much into what's going on recently and not what's going on before. She was recently involved in a scandal. They were calling her Claudia Shushbomb after, because she started shushing people at when she went out to a village. And
Yes, that had been ravaged by rain and climate.
So I think
issues.
this is an attempt to kind of put something in the media where she's just smiling at somebody that kind of put their arm around her. And I think it has more to do with that. And it's just too quick to happen with the other thing.
No, there's been precedent that AMLO, her predecessor, and the one that essentially continues to whisper in her ear, did this kind of thing every single time he wanted to distract from what was actually happening and going on. It is said and pretty clear that the Morena government, aside from being scared of the US, continuing to unravel and uncover their links and ties to cartels and other organized crime organizations, they're scared of now the people and the younger people coming out against them and seeing them enter into, for example, Michoacan's National Palace and being able to create as much chaos and the anger that they see unfolding. So if they can make her into a victim, if they can make her into
I think they're still responding to the Claudia Shushbaum scandal, and I think this is part of it. I just think
I
the
think
other
it
thing
has more
happened
to
too
do with the
quick.
protests.
Well, I mean, we can just agree to disagree, but I think we kind of both agree that it was fake, and it is a
I think
smokescreen.
everybody agrees that it's fake.
But we're just saying they're trying to cover something else up. I think it's the Shushbaum scandal. You think it's the other scandal with the revolution that may happen.
And of course, yes, maybe, but they're also using this to talk about women's safety in Mexico and feminism and etc. So Mexico arrests man for groping President Claudia Sheinbaum. She has pressed charges against the man who was filmed groping her while she was walking near the presidential palace. The
Wait,
incident.
she pressed charges on that guy?
Yes.
That's ridiculous. Yes, I don't agree with what he did, but she's a celebrity in the street with security, and now she's able to
No, she's a
press
celebrity.
well, this is giving an okay to any woman across the nation
That's what they want.
to start pressing charges on men for
They've
like
literally
ridiculous
started
things.
trying to legalize exactly those kinds of judicial processes from women against men for very subjective situations. The incident has reignited debate about women's safety in Mexico, of course.
Well, and they do have specialty laws here in Mexico, which is absolutely ridiculous. Rather than having the same law for everybody, if you have a crime against a woman, there's specialty sentences being handed out.
Mexico's President Sheinbaum said Wednesday that she had filed a criminal complaint against the man who was filmed groping and trying to kiss her. I don't know if he was trying to kiss her. The incident occurred on Tuesday.
We
First
just watched
female
it.
president,
I
yeah.
mean, he was a little bit drunk and he was a bit out of line, and it could have been set up. If it wasn't set up and it was authentic, the man doesn't deserve any charges pressed against him.
Mexico City Mayor Clara Brugada, another useless woman, said the man has been arrested. And what else did she say about? Did Sheinbaum say about the incident? During a press conference today, Sheinbaum said she had decided to press charges after learning that he had continued to harass other women after groping her. So now she's the victim and the hero to other women. No man has the right to violate that space, she said. My view is if I don't file a complaint, what will happen to other Mexican women? If they do this to the president, what will happen to all the women in our country? I decided to press charges because this is something I experienced as a woman, but that we as women experience in our country. I've experienced it before when I wasn't president, when I was a student. So they're using this, again, to make her both into a victim, but also a hero and press charges, and she doesn't want to see this continuing to happen.
Well,
to
and the
women.
United States is just kind of coming out of this. This is woke era kind of policies where you're having specialty groups, whether it's LGBTQ or women. You have special laws and special prosecutions, special sentencing for anybody that commits a crime against them. We need the same sentencing across the board. It needs to be equal for everybody.
But I do continue with most people's theories that it is a smokescreen for the protests that are happening, not so much for the shushing incident, because that happened a while ago. Most people forgot about that already.
And that still was in the headline last week.
But this helps put Sheinbaum in the context of a victim, but also a hero who's protecting women and all the, killing of mayors and other people in power that are not with Morena, with her political party. Is just, that's not important really. They're investigating it, but clearly there's more ties than they want most of the general public to know about. That's what they're scared of.
You think? Not me.
I think. Let's move on to the UK and Tommy Robinson. He says, I was targeted because of my political beliefs. Thank you, Elon Musk, for fighting in my corner. You're an absolute legend.
Yeah, and this was a political targeting of Tommy Robinson for putting out a documentary the government didn't want out that exposed the grape gangs in the UK.
And he was exonerated or found not guilty today?
Found not guilty, and they, for once, had a good judge, because if they would have had a corrupt judge, he would have been locked away for a long time.
What has been the outcome?
What has been the outcome? The outcome has been found that the police discriminated against me based on my belief and my political beliefs. Now, my grievance now, well, not my grievance. First of all, thank you, Elon Musk. Thank you, Elon Musk, because if it wasn't for Elon Musk, why is it taken an American businessman to fight for our justice here and our fight against terrorism charges for journalists? Now, over there, in a minute, it's going to come the journalists, the mainstream media. Go back now. If you want to see if you can trust the media, go back now and read the media's. Read what they said about this trial. When I was on trial, read what they said. Read the headlines, read the news that they gave out, and then read the judge's judgment, right? Because all those journalists sat on that trial, they knew the police acted unlawfully, they knew they acted illegally, they admitted it in court, and none of the journalists told you that. None of them. They were hoping they had another bench judge that would rule against me, and then you, the public, would know nothing. That judge's verdict is a slam down against the police. An absolute, read what he says, yeah? Read what he says, read about their evidence. It was corrupt, it was unlawful. For me, I'm frustrated still. I should be happy. I'm not happy because I shouldn't be put through this time and time again. I walked out of this court last year at a cost of £53,000 with a not guilty. I've just walked out again. This is nearly £100,000 we spent on this case.
Yeah, and he's having to spend a ton of money defending himself. The police are constantly targeting him. The courts are constantly targeting him. The political apparatus within the UK is specifically calling him out and targeting him. And it's funny that they're targeting him because a few years ago they had a difference of opinion. Now, the political elite within the UK are spouting his exact opinions, yet they're continuing to go after him. The narrative in the UK has now switched. The people are on Tommy Robinson's side, and therefore the politicians want to be on his side, but they still want him locked away.
Mm-hmm. And we also have this Tommy Robinson in South published saying, will you please now correct this at Nigel Farage? Now that I've been found not guilty, can you accept that I was targeted for my political beliefs, like the judge found?
And Nigel Farage runs Reform UK, which is expected to win the next election in a blowout because he was siding with the same kind of topics Tommy Robinson was siding with. The problem is he doesn't actually support Tommy Robinson, and he likes to give lip service to a lot of this, but he doesn't like to act. He's like Trump without the action, which is just a rhino.
No, Tommy Robinson's been right about many things. He's just not the company that I choose to keep. And even after that, we got, Robinson's been arrested using terrorism laws, isn't there? And then we discover, no, actually, he wasn't arrested in London. He was arrested at the port of Dover, and it's something to do with a passport issue. And, listen, he has had some things very right over the years. It's just, he's not for me. No, Tommy.
And Nigel Farage is the best they have in the UK, and that's a shame. You're going to have to vote him in because voting anybody else in is going to be a worse vote. The problem is he just doesn't have the balls like Donald Trump does.
And we also have this from Tommy Robinson saying, listen to this absolute wrong'un. Pablo Ohana openly announces that I'm, get this, a homegrown terror bad person.
Tonight I'm asking, was Tommy Robinson persecuted for his political beliefs? Going head-to-head on this now are the co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller, and the political strategist, Pablo Ohana. Thank you very much, chaps. Alan, I'll start with you. Was he persecuted for his political beliefs?
Well, it definitely appears as though he was. The judge has said that the protected characteristics need to be protected, namely what he believes. And we saw that there was a meandering response from the police, and it looked very much like what we've seen quite a lot of in the recent period, that There's some people that are arrested or put in prison for some views and others that are not. But to the credit of the judge, he focused very clearly and specifically on the situation, and he made it abundantly clear that this had nothing to do with terrorism. It's quite remarkable, actually, in a week and a month where we've seen so many attacks, and the T word, the terror word, is never to be spoken.
Yeah, Pablo, I'll bring you in on this then. I mean, according to the judge's comments, it is pretty much black and white, isn't it? That because of Tommy Robinson's political beliefs, police pulled him over and then proceeded to try to persecute him.
Well, it is ironic that people like Tommy Robinson are so in favour of stop and search until it's them that are stopped and searched. Tommy Robinson is a homegrown terrorist. He is racist. He is violent. He is an extreme right-wing...
Sorry, Pablo, can I just put you in for your own sake? Would you like to withdraw those comments about Tommy Robinson being a, quote, homegrown terrorist? Can I politely suggest to you that you might want to do that?
Tommy Robinson hates everything about our country. He has no place in our
homegrown terrorist, Pablo?
He has performed and he has
delivered
speeches that are incredibly divisive. They demonize our communities, they divide our country, and that is that is not who our country is, our country is.
But he's not a homegrown terrorist, though, is he?
He may not be a terrorist, but
okay, so you're withdrawing already, yeah.
And he encourages the type of division that this country does not stand for.
Talking of
he's the one that's being divisive, and sounds like he's trying to, you know, point at groups and peoples that he doesn't know anything about.
Well, he's lucky the host kind of helped him out there, because that would have been a lawsuit, 100% slam dunk case. The nation is now on Tommy Robinson's.
Well, not in the UK, but
the nation is on Tommy Robinson's side. The people are on his side, even in the UK. And I'll be very surprised if he doesn't run for politics here and win in an absolute landslide.
And I think also, even though with other judgments, they have also leaned in his favor, now that we do see, and I think maybe in general the public, but also those that rule the country, see the response of the public and the response that Tommy has had from the public, especially after that march that he held. I think they might be, and seeing this ruling, starting to see the way the wind is blowing more than before.
I think they're scared of Tommy Robinson. They've had a lot of trumped up charges put on him. They don't want to convict him on a trumped up charge because the public will be absolutely furious, and there will be repercussions at the polls and possibly in the streets.
Yes. So that's the UK. Let's move on to the US, because there are quite a few news items from the US today, especially after the elections that we saw in some of the states. But for now, from Eric Doherty, it says, in an incredible move, President Trump declares to the world he is ready to save the Christian population worldwide from extermination and persecution.
Yeah, and Donald Trump has been standing up for Christians for quite a while now. It's good to see him stand up for Christians again. A lot of Christians think they have been a prosecuted group over the past decade. I especially seen that in Canada. Over 200 churches burned. Nonprofit status is being taken away from churches if they don't embrace the rainbow community.
Or abortion.
Yeah, you're seeing many wars being waged on Christians in places like Nigeria and nothing being said. It's really good. Trump is standing up for these people.
I'm sure it's easier than having to talk about the other stuff that's going on in the States.
He is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands and thousands of Christians are being killed. Radical Islamists are responsible for this mass slaughter. I am hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern. That's a legal definition. When the Christians or any such group is slaughtered, like is happening in Nigeria, 3,100 versus 4,476 worldwide. What horrible numbers. Something has to be done. I am asking Congressman Riley Moore, together with Chairman Tom Cole and the House Appropriations Committee, to immediately look into this matter and to report back to me. And I mean, like, immediately. The United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria and numerous other countries. It's not only Nigeria. It's all over. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world. This is not going to happen. The killing of Christians.
Okay, and we do play everything at 1.25 speed so we don't get dinged by the YouTube censors. That's why it sounds like he's talking a little bit fast. But that being said, it's good to see Donald Trump stand up for Christians, the Christian community, especially when he's getting so much heat for also supporting Israel. So this kind of gives him a little bit of shelter from all the arrows coming his way.
What do you think of the people that continue to say America first, stop trying to go and meddle into other countries, even if it is to protect Christians?
I think a lot of people that say American first the one group they would want to protect outside of the U.S. is Christian. This is coming from Christian nationalists. The Christian nationalist movement within the United States is really having a real uprising, especially as of late. So they're going to say, if we're going to help somebody overseas, it should at least be a group that espouses our ideals.
Now moving on to the U.S. Bunch of voting and elections that has just happened from Paul A. Zipula. I think California just passed Prop 20, which takes House seats by redistricting. It rejects the nonpartisan commission drawing district lines, but in the same vote, 92% of voters said a nonpartisan commission should draw the district lines. Californians are dumb.
Yeah, and there was a ton of corruption in this. We're going to go through some of it today, but there was no ID required. A lot of people thousands of people were filming themselves and trying to offer their ID at the polling places, and the polling people would not take their IDs.
The yes vote in particular with Prop 50. The reason voters said they voted yes on Prop 50, 82% of the case, 8 out of 10 voters say it was to counter the GOP changes, not because they saw it was the best way to draw those district lines. Now, if you go back and look at those who said no to the vote, they said their reasoning to do so is that they saw this as not the best way to draw those district lines, while only 34% said it was to stop the Democrats from adding seats in Congress. A couple other things we're taking away from what voters said there in California. We asked the voters and how they would actually like to see these lines drawn. The irony of this, Trace, is that 9 out of 10 voters, even more so, said they'd like to see this done by a nonpartisan commission, not the party in power. Well, that was preempted with the outcome of this vote. The yes vote in particular.
Yeah, and they muddled the questions. The way they set out mail-in ballots, they were able to see a yes or no vote beforehand through the envelope. We had been kind of covering the story for a while, but there is another wrinkle, and that is they put a lot of money into this vote, but a lot of that money was funneled off into Gavin Newsom's next presidential campaign.
Because, of course, that's how it works. And we also have another story about this voting that has been happening. From Wall Street Apes, California voter tried to show ID when voting on the Prop 50 redistricting election, and she was denied. As soon as the lady saw me trying to take my wallet out, she said, "Oh, no, you don't need your ID."
Yeah, and this is in most Democratic states. This happened in New York as well. So the fact that the Republicans lost all these different elections, whether it was New York, I believe Virginia, and California. These are the bluest of blue states with the most corrupt election laws, election identification laws as well. So the fact that it was so close, I find very hopeful. The Democrats are taking a victory lap. I would be very concerned coming up on the midterms if I were the Democrats.
So let's see what the lady said.
And this lady looks woke, but I don't think she is. That's the interesting thing.
I mean, she might be. She might just be angry that she wanted to take her ID and wasn't allowed to.
So today's voting day here in California. There was not a wait time or whatever to vote. However, I think it's baffling that as soon as I got there, I was trying to get my wallet out to provide my ID. Because, obviously, like, you go buy alcoholic drinks, they want to verify it's you, they want to verify your age. You would think it's the same thing for voting, right? As soon as the lady saw me trying to take my wallet out, "Oh, you don't need your ID, you just have to go up there." Same thing happened when I got to the person who was going to check me in. I had my ID out, ready to provide it. "Oh, yeah, we don't need your ID, we just need your name and your address." Like, make that make sense. Like, how do you guys not see that there's something wrong with that?
And there are actually thousands of these videos coming out, and people were actually filming with the polling individual that was giving them the ballot and saying, "No, we can't even look at your ID." These are crazy election laws, and these states are going to continue to be blue states as long as this corruption continues. The one thing I will say about this, I'm all for voter ID, but traditional voter ID, if they're going to try to smuggle in a digital ID on the back of cleaning up elections, I don't agree with that. I don't think you have to have a digital ID in order to clean up an election. It's a way to strip freedoms, and it's the excuse they're going to use to bring in a digital ID.
Yes, it's very easy. It's been happening for decades now in most countries where they use just pen, paper, and the names, and you bring your physical ID and it's checked off. It does not have to be digital. We have been doing this for a long time now. Walker Reloaded says, hello, Walker.
I was just going to ask if there were any questions because nobody was commenting
Yes,
today.
Walker says, hello, guys, or guy. What happened in New York? Mamdani won, and
We're
just
get
going to
into
talk
that.
about that now.
That's the next couple stories we got, but it was completely corrupt. I will say it was completely corrupt in the fact that there was no voter ID. The way $40 million was smuggled into his campaign. We actually have a new election ad from Madani coming up, which he's going against everything he kind of ran on. But the fact that he only won by, I believe it was about 7%, should be very concerning because he was their all-star candidate. You're not going to get a candidate better than him as far as the Republican or Democratic Party goes in New York. I thought he would have won by a lot more. This is very good news, I think, for the Republicans. And I think he's going to radicalize the Democratic Party even more, which is not going to bode well for the midterms.
Yes, so first story from Wall Street Apes, the New York mayor ballot shows Zoran Mamdani on the top row multiple times. Eric Adams dropped out but is still on the ballot. Andrew Cuomo is buried in the corner at the end of this clip. He adds a video.
Well, and there was quite a few videos of this. This was the best one, I thought, but I was looking at just the raw ballot, a picture of it. I couldn't figure out how to vote on that thing. Mamdani was all over it, and these go into election machines, and his name's multiple times. They said if you marked his name multiple times, it would be only one vote, but who knows how these machines are going to work? And the main candidate going against him, it took me 5 minutes to even find this guy's name on the ballot.
After all the campaigning, it is finally time to vote, Robert. And as we look, a lot of people get in the ballots, but some people are kind of confused about what's going on this ballot.
Yeah, let's go through these ballots. First of all, a couple things.
And it looks like a date calendar for the month. Like usually the candidates are in a line with their party. This looks like 30 days in the month. How do you vote on this thing?
Things to notice. You will see a couple of the candidates on here multiple times. So Zoran Mamdani appears twice on two different party lines, the Democratic Party line and the Working Families Party line. Same thing with Curtis Sliwa. He too appears twice, once on the Republican line and once on the Protect Animals line. If you want to vote for either of these candidates, only fill in one of the circles. It's not like if you fill in two Mamdani circles or two Sliwa circles, you get two votes. No, just one vote. So just fill in one circle. Doesn't matter which of the parties you use, but fill in the circle for the candidate you want.
So in other words, if I vote for Mamdani in Working Families, it'll still count for Mamdani, the Democrat.
It'll count for the same person. It'll go to the tally corresponding to the party.
And I remember a lot of people during the primary, obviously that was a ranked choice system. We're seeing a lot of candidates here, and this is not ranked choice. This is winner takes all.
Correct. This is vote for one candidate. And we should also point out, if we come in a little tighter, a couple candidates who have dropped out, i.e. Jim Walden, Mayor Eric Adams.
Still on the ballot.
They're still on the ballot, and the reason why they are is because they announced their intentions to drop out after the deadline had passed. So these ballots had already been made up. If you don't want to waste your vote, don't vote for one of those two candidates. Vote for someone else.
People may end up seeing their names, though, and they may end up thinking that they could still be on there, but they have withdrawn from this election.
Correct.
And then also important here that it's not just the mayor's race. We've got a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, of course, we've given the mayor's race the lion's share of attention, and understandably so, but the Board of Elections points out that a lot of these down ballot races, like public advocate, for city council, those city council seats may affect you more kind of in a nitty-gritty way than the mayor's race. So
that was pretty much.
People don't know that fact about voting. I don't want them voting at all.
That was the second most confusing ballot that I had seen recently. They had another ballot scandal in Canada recently where they flooded the ballot with over 200 candidates, and they buried the candidate they didn't want to win from the Conservative Party. Well, they put the Liberal candidate right at the top, very easy to vote for. In this case, they doubled up the Democrat's name twice on the first line.
And as I've said, with Zoran Mamdani now actually winning, well, let New York experience what they've been asking and clamoring for so long and see if after 6 months, a year, they still think it's a good idea and they still want it. And if they do, well, then good for them. But from Jack, LMAO communist Zoran Mamdani just abandoned all of his supporters and his entire platform. He says in order for him to make changes and make things free, his supporters must send him money, because that is how actual communism and socialism work. They need money to do these things, and they take it from the people.
This was a very slick commercial. They had the music. He came off very good in this thing, and you had to watch all the way to the very end where he says, "Send me money." And I think there's a bigger orchestrated campaign going on here with Mondani. They want to show communism works. So I think a lot of money is going to flow in here from NGOs and global organizations to kind of get a foothold on U.S. politics for the Democrats and put Mondani as one of the big vocal leaders of communism works or socialism works, whatever you want to call it here.
Then potato.
Good morning, New York City. Thank you. Last night we made history. Today we begin the work of making a new administration. Welcome to the transition. This is the period over the next few months where we build a city hall that delivers on the promises of our campaign, to make New York City affordable and to make government accountable to the people it serves. As we prepare to govern, we'll start announcing the leaders who will help implement our agenda. People like deputy mayors who oversee entire areas of government and the commissioners who carry out the critical work of city agencies. These appointments will be driven by excellence, integrity, and hunger to solve old problems with new solutions. Talking to organizers on the front lines of the fight to improve our city, government veterans with proven track records, policy experts from around the country and the world, and working people who know better than anyone what our neighborhoods deserve. And this will be a period, like the campaign we ran in the City Hall to come, defined by transparency, because New Yorkers deserve a government they can trust. On January 1st, I will be your mayor. New Year's Day, and a new era for this city. Oh, and one more thing. Remember how I told you a few months ago to stop sending us money? You can start again. This transition requires staff, research, and an infrastructure that can meet this moment. And it will be made possible by the people who built and believe in this movement. So I hope you'll make a donation at transition2025.com. Now let's get to work.
And this was the plan all along, because the money's going to get
such a retard.
The money's going to get cut off from the federal government. But if the Democrats want a chance at the next presidential election, they're going to want to show how they cleaned up New York, how socialism works, how these are the new policies to bring America forward. And it's going to be completely contrived. It doesn't work if you're truly implementing it. It's only going to work if they're rigging the system here.
And again, it is ironic and hilarious that now they're asking for money. You know how we told you to stop sending us money? Send it again, because we effed up and have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Scary for New York, but good luck on January 1st.
He only won by 7%. That was stunning. Cuomo was the main opposition candidate, and he was a horrible candidate. If anybody, it's almost like the Democrats put up Cuomo because they knew nobody would vote for him, and he still got a lion's share of the vote. They were trying to rig this thing so Mondani would win, whether it was the ballot, whether it was his opponent, and the $40 million that came into his campaign that was illegal from George Soros and George Soros NGOs.
Yes. And now you have a story about the Supreme Court. Do you want to introduce it or no? About the tariff hearings?
Yeah, why don't we go to the...
From Jesse Waters, breaking, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announces he's going to sit in the front row during this week's Supreme Court tariff hearings. I'm actually going to sit, hopefully, in the front row and have a ringside seat. Sorry, our dog is misbehaving and trying to ruin the studio. They can say whatever they want. I'm here to emphasize this is an economic emergency.
Okay, and this is going to be the biggest Supreme Court case of all the Supreme Court cases. If they knock down Trump's tariffs, this is going to be absolutely disastrous. So far, it's working. It's working phenomenally. They've brought over $600 billion into the U.S. economy, and it's not even a full year. All the full tariffs haven't been implemented. It's going to bring over $1 trillion a year. They would actually be able to pay down their deficit if they were getting over $1 trillion a year. It takes time to turn the economy around. When they were running, they said within 30 days, Trump would collapse the economy if this tariff came in. Prices would go through the roof. Just the opposite is kind of happening. The only way to stop Trump is to stop the tariffs. So if the Supreme Court does knock this down, there will be one other option for Trump. I did check on Grok just before this to see when...
So take it with a grain of salt.
So I got to see when the ruling would come in, and it's supposed to come in early next year. So everybody kind of presented the evidence here. I was very concerned by the questions the Supreme Court justices were asking. It looks like they're going to probably knock this thing down. If that's the case, I'll talk about the other option after this clip.
You were also saying that Trump also said that he wanted to be there, but he ended up not being in the front row.
Yeah, we have some clips on everything.
Okay.
One of the things that's gotten us to this position are tariffs. And the Supreme Court is going to hear the tariff case this week. If they kick that out, what happens?
Well, I don't think they're going to. I'm actually going to go and sit, hopefully in the front row, and listen, have a ringside seat. And just this is a matter of national security. If President Trump had not had the IEEPA, which is an emergency tariff authority, back in the spring, he put IEEPA tariffs on China. And last week in excuse me, in Korea, the Chinese agreed to start working to bring down the precursors for fentanyl. If fentanyl is not a national emergency, what is? China, on October 8th, threatened to curtail rare earths to the entire world. President Trump threatened to put on 100% tariffs and protected our national security using the IEEPA power. And then finally, these big trade deficits we've had for years in economics, there's something called a tipping point. And we were at the tipping point. Fortunately, President Trump came in, he put on the tariffs, he is rebalancing global trade in favor of the U.S., and he has prevented an economic crisis.
So the media is going to say if the Secretary of Treasury shows up, front row seat, to the Supreme Court hearing on tariff, you're intimidating the justices. They're going to say Bessent is intimidating.
And that's kind of true. If he does show up, this is going to show the importance of this Supreme Court hearing. Trump's also saying he wanted to show up. I don't think either of them are going to show up because it's going to do just that. It's going to look like intimidation, but there is not a more important hearing than this single hearing that the Supreme Court will hear for Trump. The country's entire economic future relies on tariffs. That being said, it looked like Democrats and the Biden were just transitioning power over to China before this. Trump actually figured out a way to retool and bring wealth back into America and back to the working class. You can go into the next clip here.
Yeah, so Trump says Sleepy Joe landed a $1 trillion investment in 4 years. I hit 21 trillion in one.
And this is the truth. The tariffs are not only a taxes that the government is able to bring, and he wants to take down all income taxes, but it's also bringing manufacturing investment from private industry, something Canada is not able to do. They don't understand how to lure private industry back to the United States. Donald Trump is kind of baking these into all these deals.
In the prior 4 years, crooked Joe Biden oversaw less than $1 trillion of new investment in the United States. So in 4 years, less than 1 trillion. That was not doing too good. In 9 months, I've secured commitments of over $18 trillion, and we're going to have 21 trillion within the first year. So Sleepy Joe did.
And even if it's only half of that, if he's exaggerating, it's still $10 trillion, 10 times the amount the Democrats brought in. The United States was on the way down. China was on the way up. And now they seem to be on the same footing. And if they can get this right and the Supreme Court actually rules with Trump to hold these tariffs in place, America is going to stay the world superpower, or at least have a huge influence on the North American pole.
Think of that. In 4 years, he did less than $1 trillion. We're going to have 21 trillion in 1 year. I would say it's slightly better. Slightly, just a little bit better.
Okay, and let's talk about what happens if the Supreme Court does knock this down, because I was very concerned. Even though the majority of the Supreme Court justices are supposedly Republican, a lot of these Republicans, like Amy Coney Barrett, is a rhino, a Republican in name only. They are never Trumpers, and even though Trump appointed her, it was a mistake. She's been voting against him constantly, siding with the Democrats. I could see this vote going the opposite way just based on the questions they were asking. I watched a lot of the hearing today, and each Supreme Court justice got to ask individual questions. They asked questions like, how would we give the money back? If they're already asking how is this going to work to give the money back from these tariffs, it's very concerning. There is one other option, and Trump seems to know this option, and that is they need to knock down, oh God, what did I call it earlier?
The filibuster.
The filibuster. So right now there's something in place called the filibuster where you need 60 votes in order to pass anything through Congress. Trump could vote to make that a simple majority, which would be 51 votes, which he easily has. That way he could push through anything. It is a huge consolidation of power. I do understand Trump's thinking on this, and that is if the Democrats get in power, they're going to get rid of the filibuster anyway. So he might as well do it first. If he gets rid of that filibuster, he's going to be able to vote to keep tariffs in place through Congress rather than through executive order. He's also going to be able to secure a lot of the other things he's done through executive order through Congress. The issue is if the Democrats ever do get back into power, they'll recognize Puerto Rico as a state, Washington, D.C. as a state. They're going to get a lot more a lot more seats in the House. It's not going to be good if the Democrats get back into power, but Trump will be able to do a lot right now and at least float and strengthen the U.S. economy through the tariff.
But don't you think that then the Democrats would start and going, oh, see, we told you he wanted to be a king. He wanted to take a hold of Congress as well. Now he's forcing us to pass all these things.
It's definitely going to be something they're going to use in the midterms and in the next election, and it's going to give them ammo. The thing is, if he does it, and he's able to keep the tariff and the economy does significantly better, which it's headed in the right direction right now, he's going to be able to use that for ammo against the Democrats and say, see what I did with the economy. And because he only needs a simple majority at that point, he can give massive tax returns. He can do a lot of other things. So people will really understand the economy starting to turn around.
But the problem is he needs more time for the tariffs to fully work, and now the Supreme Court is starting to sound like they might not side with him once again.
If he knocks down the filibuster before early next year, January, then he's going to beat the Supreme Court to the punch, and it's not going to matter what they say. The problem is, I think he's thinking that because I think we have a clip of it actually.
This one from Eric Doherty, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says, I think the economy is going to go gangbusters. In the first quarter of 2026, working families are going to see very good refunds coming out. They will change their withholding. They will get real wage increase.
Well, this clip and the next clip kind of go together, I believe.
Okay.
As you may know, I am also not only the...
This is Scott Bessent. He's the main economic advisor and the architect of what's really going on here. He actually used to work for George Soros, surprisingly, but he knows the ins and outs of the system, seems to be really loyal to Trump. He's been doing a great job so far, so that's why I've been using
Secretary, but I am the IRS commissioner, and I can see what is happening with withholding. So the president's working class, they had tax policies, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility on auto loans of American-made cars. No one has changed their withholding for 2025. So in the first quarter of 2026, working families are going to see very good refunds coming out. They will change their withholding on January 1, so they will get real wage increases. And, as you said, inflation is under control. And, I think the economy is going to go gangbusters. But as you may know, I am...
So they'll actually get to see no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, huge refunds. They're going to understand the economy's turning around. It didn't collapse like the Democrats said it would. And then you're going to go right into the midterms. So, yeah, what is the next clip we have?
So from Eric Doherty as well, President Trump is laying it all out to GOP senators right now on if GOP nukes the filibuster, they'll make D.C. a state, they'll make Puerto Rico a state. So for Democrat senators, you think you have problems, they're going to pick up electoral votes. It will be very bad and it will be done. But let's see what Trump actually says.
Legislation at levels you've never seen before, and it'll be impossible to beat us. By the way, if they do, they're going to do it anyway, and they are going to immediately do the filibuster. And when they do the filibuster, they're going to pack the court. They want at least five justices. Now I hear it's up to 5. I actually heard up to 7 and up to 9, okay? They want new judges. They want to pack the court, and they will do it the first day, maybe the week. Maybe they'll slow it down because there's no reason to rush. But they'll do it first week. They'll vote on this. And I have friends over there that are Democrats. I'm close to a lot of people. And I asked them about that because some people say, well, maybe they won't do that. I mean, they destroyed the career of Manchin and Sinema. And they got them out. They were the only objectors. Nobody else is going to object. They're going to do it the first day. They're going to pack the court. They're going to make D.C. a state, and they're going to make Puerto Rico a state. So now they pick up 2 states. They pick up 4 senators. Okay? You think you have problems? They're going to do all of the things. They're going to pick up electoral votes. It's going to be a very, very bad situation. And it's done. It's done. As soon as they attain power. Now, if we do what I'm saying, they'll most likely never attain power because we will have passed every single thing that you can imagine that it's good and all good for the country. And there'll be no reason to. If we don't do that, people say They're not doing much, and they're in power. So the good news is...
Okay, that's good. And it looks like Trump wants to bet on himself. He's willing to bet if they can get rid of this filibuster, he can convince the American people that he's heading the country in the right direction.
But he is kind of between a rock and a hard place, isn't
Well, but right now is the time because the government shutdown, this is the longest shutdown in American history. The Democrats are refusing to open the government. So it's the perfect cover excuse to kind of get rid of the filibuster because they can open the government again. And that can be the surface excuse. The real reason he wants to get rid of this filibuster is he wants to keep the tariffs in place. And he's very scared, especially after today, of the Supreme Court ruling against these tariffs. And the only way to kind of stop that is to get rid of the filibuster. But I don't think he wants to make that the primary reason. It's very easy to convince the American people it's because of the shutdown that's been going on, because people are feeling the hurt with their Medicare, with no food stamps being given out. So right now is a good opportunity. If he is going to get rid of the filibuster, do it now while the government is still shut down.
But I do think the Democrats could still use that to say, oh, see, he wants to be a king, blah, 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 blah.
They will, but like he kind of said there, he does realize if he does that, he's going to have to make it worth the American public's while to vote for him. And I think he will.
And Walker asks you, says, Guy, throughout history, New York has always been lefty, right? Because I've always known that New York has always been a dangerous place full of gangs, and that only happens in places ruled by the left.
No, not always. If you know, Trump's good friend Rudy Giuliani was actually a Republican, and they were so fed up with the crime at that point because it was absolutely out of control. They brought Rudy Giuliani in. He absolutely cleaned up New York City. And every time they do bring a Republican in, it actually is in their benefit. They just never stick to it.
Was Giuliani a Republican?
I
don't
believe
think he
so, yeah.
was. No. I'm looking it up.
Okay, why don't you look it up, and we can go into the next story.
Well, because we have to go to RUMBLE now to continue the stories. Oh, yeah, he was a Republican.
Yeah. I don't like when you fact check on the air because I got to keep going, but I need something on the screen as an article to keep going.
Yes, he is a Republican.
Yeah.
But exactly, New York has been mostly captured by the left. And when things have been, I mean, they've done things to try to improve it, like when they try to clean up Times Square. I forget that mayor's name, Bloomberg, I believe. Bloomberg did a big cleanup, and it did work out pretty well, but then it just continues to get ruined.
It was because Giuliani was in during Bloomberg. It was Giuliani that was doing a lot of the stuff, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I don't know too much about New York. It's not a place I like. I've been a few times.
But yeah, the most radical places in the United States are
same as California.
New York, California, Washington State, and Oregon. And those are the blue strongholds. And that's why the voter laws are so corrupt there. You don't need an ID to vote, which is absolutely insane. And then they flood the population with illegal immigration, and you don't need an ID. So illegal immigrants are able to vote, and you're able to vote through the mail based upon the honor system.
Mm-hmm. But now we're heading over to RUMBLE because the last few stories are too spicy and we probably want to say words we can't on YouTube.
Yeah, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Slowly but surely, we're getting there.
So we'll see you over at RUMBLE, same channel name, and it'll take a few seconds to move over there.
Okay, are you logged off?
Yes, now you can say Rumble. 1 second, please. I'm
Still